Previously on the all-new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast.
Chris, what are we going to be reading next month?
Well, you know what? I thought I'd take us to a fantastic city, one of my favourite cities in the country, nay the world. A city that has brought you Oasis, a city that has brought you the band James, the Stone Roses, a city that has brought you fantastic football and also some rather lovely beer. We're going to Manchester and we're going to go and sample some Goth Opera.
And now our story continues.
Welcome to the all-new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast. This is Matt in Minnesota.
Chris in South London.
Chris, welcome back.
Yes, indeed. Yes, I'm freshly back in the United Kingdom, having been over in Greece, at Santorini, which and also Crete.
Those are both islands, right?
Indeed, yes, they are. We didn't set foot on the mainland of Greece. Saw it from the plane, though. Though Santorini is, I think, featured in The Time Monster, or at least allegedly is. The UK and Europe, I think more Europe than the UK, has been having a heat wave of late. There were hardly any clouds as we were flying across Europe today, which is gorgeous. And just looking down, just seeing the Alps and various bits of like the Croatian coastline and everything. It was just, yeah, really stunning. And seeing kind of like Athens and whatnot, several thousand feet up. It was good. But yeah, so Santorini is allegedly where, it's possibly the inspiration for Atlantis. It was an island in its own right. Well, it still is, but it had a volcano on it, and the volcano erupted spectacularly, destroying about half the island and causing it to kind of fall into the water. So that's where it is thought that possibly part of the whole kind of like mythology of Atlantis has come from.
Well, one of three explanations, right, in Doctor Who.
Indeed, in Doctor Who.
Maybe it's Atlantis B or C.
Potentially so. And you can go swimming in the volcano that possibly caused Atlantis, which is what I did on Tuesday.
Cool.
Which is quite bizarre, swimming in an active volcano. Well, a dormant volcano, but you know.
The architecture on the island reminds me a little bit of like a cross between the village in Logopolis and on Tatooine in the Phantom Menace. Just kind of that really interesting architecture style.
Yeah, I was getting a few flashbacks to the village in quite a few places, not least of all our holiday resorts we were staying at. It was really lovely. It was nice to be somewhere, just kind of relax and rest. And we also went to Knossos, which is where the Minotaur allegedly hung out, and it's also where Icarus and Daedalus, his dad, built the palace allegedly at Knossos. Despite the fact they are mythical people, the palace is very real. And this kind of thing, you might have cultural influences in like the museum and say, oh, this inspired such and such. But alas, there were no photos of the Daimon, which is a shame. This is a shame.
I still haven't seen that episode.
No.
One of these days.
You haven't seen Time Monster either, have you? Or am I wrong in remembering that?
No, you're right.
Or Underworld.
I haven't seen Time Monster yet. I did just recently watch The Mutants, though, so
Oh, okay. So you're down.
So I'm down from 8 to 7 that I haven't seen.
Right.
Yeah,
Fair
but
enough.
yeah, Underworld, yes. Horns of Nimon, and Time Monster are all ones I haven't seen yet.
Yeah, so basically any colour classic story in featuring Greek mythology.
Which I think they were bundled together at the end of the VHS range. Or maybe the DVD bundle was, that was the tying, like Myths and Legends was the tying.
Yes, they were, wasn't it?
The tying theme.
It was, yes. Yes.
Oh, that's
yeah.
great. Welcome back. Sounds like you had a wonderful vacation.
It was good. It was very nice. Very nice. So, how have you been?
I'm great. I'm getting ready for Convergence in Minneapolis next weekend, which I think by the time this podcast comes out, will have come and gone. It'll be the 21st annual and the first in downtown Minneapolis. So I think previously, except for 1 year where with Neil Gaiman, where it was in St. Paul, it's always been held out in Bloomington, not too far from the Mall of America. So the first time it's changed locations in about 20 years. And downtown convention's very different from a convention out in the suburbs, so it'll be, I think, a lot of adjustments to get used to. But I volunteered for them every single year that they've had the convention, and used to be their programming director, as well as serving on the board of directors for the parent organization. So I really am hoping that it succeeds and it takes to the new space, and it kind of feels like it was time for a change with that convention anyway. Mm-hmm. And Stephen from Radio Free Scaro and Erica from Verity are in town, and they'll be attending. It'll be their first time back, I think, for a number of years. Lynn from Verity usually makes it up every year, and I don't think Paul Cornell will be attending this year, unfortunately, the author of the very book we're reading this month, Goth Opera.
Yeah. I
remember him telling me at Gallifrey while we were waiting in line for a food truck that he's having to miss it this year for the first year in some time. But we will be having Doctor Who Tavern there at the convention, as we've done the last several years, because the convention's 4 days long and it starts on Thursday, and the convention usually falls on the first Thursday of the month because it's tied in with the 4th of July in the States. And I didn't realize that Tavern in London was also the first Thursdays. So I think it may have been coordinated that way on purpose, but I just recently learned that, and I was like, oh, they're the... And so I kind of wonder if all the other taverns, like the one in Canada, if they're also kind of all on the first Thursdays. Oh, I was going to say, speaking of tavern, last month in Minneapolis, we had a special guest, Lars Pearson of Mad Norwegian Press, author of the I Who series and co-author along with Lance Parkin of the A History series, stopped by to have dinner with us, and that was a lot of fun. And I've been trying to get rid of the sand in my Tupperware from Southern Down Beach, so I had like 6 or 7 of those to pass out. So Lars now has some of the sand from the beach I collected in his house, which is pretty cool.
Marvelous stuff. Yeah, is he a mad Norwegian?
I guess so.
Or is he Norwegian?
He doesn't look particularly Norwegian, but
okay.
One can only assume, given
Lars. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, what do you have for show and tell this month?
Yeah, sorry, slightly thrown you with that one. So, 2 things. One quick is last month I spoke about Years and Years, which is a very brave thing to do, having only seen 2 episodes of it. Oh, that is an excellent piece of television. And also Murray Gold is doing the music for it. And as is his wont, he sounds so very different from the various different iterations of Doctor Who. And it's such a good piece of TV. It really is. It's going to be on HBO in America. If you've not cancelled HBO once Game of Thrones has been finished, and you're just thinking, oh, maybe should I just stick around until Years and Years is on, watch it. It'll be very good, I promise you. But what I am going to recommend is Good Omens. Have you seen Good Omens yet?
I've seen the first episode of Good Omens. I haven't watched more of it yet, but I'm planning to. It's on Amazon Prime, right?
It is. And it's going to be on the BBC later on this year for British viewers to watch for free. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Because you've got David Tennant as being one very obvious Doctor Who connection, as well as Neil Gaiman himself, who has written 2 episodes of Doctor Who. One of them possibly heavily script edited. But yeah, it's marvellous. David Tennant is basically playing Bill Nighy playing the Doctor. That's the only way I can describe his performance. He's playing a demon up against Michael Sheen, who's playing an angel. I say up against. I mean, they have this charming bromance or romance that kind of goes on for millennia. It's wonderful. I remember reading the book like many years ago, so I can't quite remember how it kind of like stacks up to the book kind of plot wise, but there were some bits I was like, oh, this is actually, yes, this is ringing bells as to how it was in the book. But it's wonderful. There's an amazing cast, including some people who just pop up for some bonkers cameos. I would say it's probably worth just getting Amazon Prime on for like 7 days watching it and then cancelling.
Yeah, I've liked what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking both of those out.
Good. What have you got for show and tell?
Well, apart from being excited about Convergence, I wanted to share another kind of book-related tidbit I learned, second in a series, dear listener, kind of fitting in with how this month's Goth Opera and last month's Blood Harvest form sort of like a duology between the two. So I was doing a little independent research and building an inventory of Target novels that also have audio releases, as you do. On a when I had a little bit of downtime, I was like, oh, I wonder how many there were. And there was no quick answer online, so I had to count them all up myself. And I'll share my results of that in a second. But while I was doing that, I discovered, much to my surprise, that BBC Books has been releasing unabridged audio narrations of not only Target novels, but also some Virgin New and Missing Adventures, as well as past Doctor novels.
Really?
Yeah, they've done 11 so far, which surprised me. And I'll just read the titles that have unabridged audios now. So, Corpse Marker, The Roundheads, Last of the Gadarene, Human Nature, The Witch Hunters, Shadow in the Glass, A Morality Tale, Shakedown, Scream of the Shalka, Illegal Alien, and Scales of Injustice. And the narrators include Dan Starkey, India Fisher, Richard Franklin, Annika Wills, and Lisa Bowerman. So some of those titles have been republished in recent years, as part of like the 50th or the history collection, but a lot of them have not. So it's an interesting mix across the ranges, and I had no idea about it, so that kind of surprised me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not been very well publicised, I don't think. I was like, I've not heard of that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, well, that's cool. So if any of our future book picks include those titles, we have the audio option for those. Although I think some of them either we've covered or the previous podcast has covered. But anyway, so on to the results of my Target adaptations to audio research. So a couple of caveats here. I'm only counting unabridged audios, so I'm not counting things like Paul McGann's abridged reading of the TV movie or abridged versions of like Warriors of the Deep or Attack of the Cybermen, from the 90s. And my denominator in this equation is 161. So that includes, Dalek Master Plan broken into 2 novels.
Yeah.
Trial of a Time Lord as 4 novels, K9 and Company, Shada, etc. So of those 161 books, by my count, a whopping 119 already have unabridged audios that have been released, recorded, or announced.
Wow.
So that means only 42 left to go, one of which will be Terror of the Zygons, and that's kind of on the distant horizon, but no narrator announced yet. So yeah, they're already 74% done.
Yeah.
With Target audios. That's a lot farther along than I thought they were.
Yeah. I'm surprised they're not saving Terror of the Zygons to last, because that's what they normally do, isn't it? Certainly with the DVDs, they decided they wanted to hang on and like finish with a good one. It seems to be Terror of the Zygons' lot in life.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I guess the Zygons are a little bit more marketable, having actually returned to Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things about the Zygons DVD release, and I was really glad that they waited as long as they did because they were able to find it and include it, is that brilliant opening scene that was shot on film and was dropped from broadcast because of a technical malfunction with the TARDIS materializing, and I want to say it materialized invisibly, and that's kind of how you get this whole conversation where the Doctor's changing his clothes and stuff. So it's a good 2.5 minute scene that was just cut from the episode, that they discovered in an attic in black and white, and they had to recolorize it and then cleaned it up and stuff. But that scene alone, just to see Sarah, Harry, and the Doctor vintage. A brand new scene with them it's so beautiful. Yeah.
What was it I was listening to recently where sort of it had been put to Philip Hinchcliffe that maybe he made a mistake with getting rid of Harry so early on, but because now I have a huge soft spot for Harry Sullivan and new Harry Sullivan material, because I've known about that clip that you've spoken about, but I've never actually watched it. So I think possibly when we're done, I'll have a quiet little search on various bits of the interwebs and see if I can find it.
Yeah, it's worth seeking out if you haven't seen it. It's fun.
Yeah.
So,
right. Shall we start talking to good people about Goth Opera?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
The first of 33 missing adventures. So, yeah, kind of a historic significance to this particular book. Not only, with it tying into Blood Harvest last month, but just launching a new range. And it's kind of funny, too, because the range, the missing adventures were only published from this book, I think, in July of 94 to April of 1997. So not even 3 years when you think about it, that it was active.
Yeah, it feels like it was on for so much longer.
Mm-hmm.
But I think part of that might be because the first... were they called short trips?
Oh, the Decalogues.
Yeah, the first Decalogue came out a year or so prior. And so that had kind of made fiction with earlier Doctors could work. Yeah, it is weird though that it was only on for 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And this book's written by Paul Cornell, so he was chosen to launch the line. So do we want to maybe spend a few minutes talking about him? What do we know about Paul apart from him being a semi-regular Convergence attendee?
Yes, and also writer of Lex Luthor in the comics and Captain Britain. Yeah, and one of his Captain Britain storylines featured vampires on the moon. Which, yes. Said vampires were led by David Cameron in his comic, who was the then Conservative leader and leader of the opposition. And Marvel sort of went, yeah, no, you're not putting a major foreign politician in as your villain. So, he was forced to change it to somebody that kind of looked a bit like him.
In addition to Captain Britain and his run on Action Comics and Superman, so he created Bernice Summerfield, of course. He's written for Big Finish, for BBC Books, for Virgin. He's written 2 stories over 3 episodes for the TV series. He's written really popular nonfiction works like License Denied, which is a late 90s journey through Doctor Who fanzines and fandom, as well as co-authored the very popular Discontinuity Guide.
He's also written, is it The Witches of Lynchford, and which is an ongoing series that has done very well, that I think he's in the process of wrapping up.
In addition to his work on Superman, he's written for Wolverine, Fantastic Four, X-Men, Batman, as well as the TV shows Robin Hood, Coronation Street, Primeval, Casualty, and Elementary in the States. So he's been very prolific over the years.
You keep on mentioning Elementary, and I always forget that he's written for Elementary, and it makes me think that I ought to track it down, because it doesn't seem as if Elementary is on any streaming service I have access to. Over here, which is a shame.
I've never watched it myself.
Okay, I know some of the twists of what they do to try and make it a little bit different, but it sounds like an interesting show.
According to I Who, the plot for this novel was originally developed from an unproduced comic strip for DWM, which would have featured the 4th Doctor versus Dracula, but he reworked that for this novel with the 5th Doctor.
Interesting. I must say, it's not obvious.
So let's talk about the cover of this missing adventure.
Oh, yes. Yes, therein lies a story, doesn't it? So the cover, you've got Peter Davison. You also have Nyssa, and she appears to have spilt some ketchup on her top on the cover that we see.
And just around her collar, really.
Yeah. And her teeth are a little bit more jagged than normal. So this was not the original cover. What happened was that W.H. Smiths, who probably not quite as prominent in book-selling circles in the UK these days as they were back in the 90s, but they said, we are not going to sock this book, because there was a basic gore fest going on Nissa's shirt in the original cover, and they insisted that it be toned down a lot. And in those days, you did not want to annoy W.H. Smith. I mean, I don't know what Amazon's rules are on kind of like covers or anything. The cover doesn't, because you can easily see the original cover with like the splatter, and it doesn't feel like much, really, to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they weren't putting these in the children's sections either. This was they would have them in the science fiction section of their bookshops.
Right. Same in the States, too.
Yeah. So you've got them in the vague same area as you have the Terry Pratchett book covers of the late 80s, early 90s, which often had women with their breasts kind of like well out and sort of like weird portions. And I'm sure those are parodies, but it's just, yeah, very odd. I don't quite understand.
And maybe there was more scrutiny too because it was the launch of a new range too, so they maybe wanted to avoid controversy, or hard to say.
Yeah, and also I think this is probably shortly after Kate Ormond's run-in with the Daily Mail on the left-handed hummingbird. Yeah, maybe everyone was just gonna go, yeah, let's just try and be normal or something.
This was one of the first Doctor Who books I read, along with Blood Harvest and Evolution, which was the second missing adventure. And one of the things I remember, even back in 1996, I really liked just the design of the missing adventure covers, more so than the new adventures in terms of the layout. I guess it felt more like a series to me, and I like how you're guaranteed, both a Doctor painting or illustration, and then also one for the companion as well. So you get two likenesses. And then I also really liked the silver version of the diamond logo that they use, and how there's usually like a scene depicted from the story or the monster. In this case, we get a castle on the cover. I liked on the back cover how you're given the two stories that this is meant to kind of slot seamlessly between.
Yes.
And I know for one of the missing adventure books, I want to say it was with the first Romana, that meant kind of shoehorning the book in during the Key to Time quest, but they managed to do that, I guess. And I mean, this one is supposed to take place between Snake Dance and Modern Undead, and I don't think there's really like a gap in the stories there, is there?
Oh,
for that to fit.
Paul Cornell addressed this. He addressed this in an interview in DWM. Probably that suggests that maybe there was a bit of an issue, because in Modern Undead, Tegan is still kind of talking about like the Mara and recovering from the problems that she's been having. And he said, well, why can't we say that there's been a third Mara story? Yeah, I suppose. But how unlucky is Tegan? Like, the Doctor has never encountered a Mara before, and then he basically has a hat trick of Mara stories with her. But she just has all manner of psychological issues. Yeah, no wonder she's grumpy.
Yeah. She goes through a lot in this book, too, as does Nyssa.
Yes, yeah. This is... Well, Paul Cornell, certainly for the new adventures, he said that he would always approach them as movies. And so, like, the characters grow and have experiences. Yeah, certainly people are put through the ringer in this book. I think we probably ought to, before we start talking about the book, we might need to do like a previously, mightn't we? Just to kind of like sum up what happened in Blood Harvest.
Yep. Before we get to that, we get a lengthy foreword by Peter Darville Evans, where he talks about launching the missing adventures. It's like a 3-page kind of letter, which is interesting. Kind of shows you where they were at the time. And then there's a prologue, there's 11 chapters, and there's an epilogue. And the book itself is dedicated to Terrence, which I can only assume is Terrence Dix.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's not Terrence Dudley.
Potentially, who knows?
I think they might spell their names slightly different. Is it 1R versus 2? I'd have to look it up.
Yeah.
Most of the book takes place in Manchester, and it's our second Australian adventure. Part of this takes place in Tasmania, and it's mainly set around the year 1993, which is, of course, for Tegan, the near future. Yeah, I think if we want to recap last month's book, like you were saying, this follows on. It's kind of a prequel to, it gets very timey-wimey. Last month ended with Romana deciding to remain on Gallifrey after escaping E-Space. We encountered a time lady named Rutha, or simply Ruth, as she's known in this book, who was inquiring about the Doctor on Gallifrey, and she just missed meeting up with the Seventh Doctor. And then Lord Yarvin, who's a vampire from the unnamed planet in State of Decay, had stowed away on board the TARDIS by hiding in some of Benny's archaeological equipment in the TARDIS, and he fled into the streets of Chicago in 1929.
Basically, all of that is shoehorned into kind of like the final few pages, isn't it, of Blood Harvest? It's like, oh yeah, no, we need to continue this somehow or other. There you go, run with this, Paul. There are things that are referenced, sort of flashbacks to Blood Harvest. It's like, I don't remember that happening. But so anyway, we might go on to that. It's not seamless.
The recap that we're going through starts a little bit differently than how the book's laid out. So a lot of what's I'm going to talk about is revealed about halfway through in a flashback, but I think presenting it chronologically is fine.
Yeah.
So Goth Opera opens. Well, it doesn't open. So in terms of the backstory, the backstory
Yes.
for Goth Opera. So the Time Lady Ruth, who we encountered at the end of Blood Harvest, she's a scholar of ancient Gallifreyan history, and she was part of the Doctor's graduating class, a fellow Pyridonian, and she's been convinced that at the end of his life, Rassilon himself had become a vampire, and that it's the Time Lord's destiny to become a vampiric race. So she kind of goes on about how regeneration is similar to like the Matrix, or the essence that fuels vampires as well. She participated in blood rituals with the cults that worship Rassilon the vampire on Gallifrey, and through them she acquired an ancient artifact called the Ring of Rassilon, which is both the symbol of the great vampire's defeat and a means of remotely controlling all Time Lord technology. So it's quite a powerful device that she has.
Yes, it's a nice MacGuffin.
Yeah, it is. After what happened in Blood Harvest with Agonal, the bad guy from that story, and the Seventh Doctor leaves Gallifrey, Ruth realizes that the events that have just come to pass were predicted by the ancient Time Lords, and she confirms that the vampire Lord Yarvin had just been taken to Earth on the Doctor's TARDIS. Ruth then captures Romana and kind of holds her at gunpoint and takes her into the presidential chambers. And Romana, by the way, was offered a seat on the High Council by President Flavia, so she's considering that. And Ruth, when she's in the presidential chambers, she shoots Flavia with a stunner and then uses the Ring of Rassilon to access the time scoop. There's kind of a funny scene where Romana doesn't want to play the harp for her, and she's saying, like, stick your fingers in Rassilon's eyes, and then it'll open.
Yeah.
This is kind of some humorous bits here.
It's the third book we have read in which there's been scenes in that chamber with that harp.
And it may not be the last, depending on...
At this rate, it won't be the last.
Yeah. So Romana, tries to stop her, but Ruth uses her ring to not only open the chamber, but then when she has access to the time scoop, she then sends Romana into a swamp full of drashigs. So you get a scene where like Romana's being chased by the different drashigs, and then she realizes that she's stuck in a miniscope. And the miniscope happens to be owned by Glitz and Dibber from Dragonfire, so they get a cameo.
Yeah, a very unexpected appearance. Yeah.
And Romana kind of escapes and is just standing there, and they're freaking out a little bit. And Ruth also uses the time scoop to locate the Doctor, and she decides to reject his devious seventh incarnation, and she takes note of what his final form is, whatever that is. And then she decides to eventually choose to attack the more vulnerable fifth Doctor.
She chooses him because he looks the youngest. So, yeah, she doesn't go that far ahead, does she? Because I don't know.
That's true.
Does Peter Davison look younger than Matt Smith? I'm not sure.
No.
Maybe the astonishing final form is like, oh, he becomes a woman or something.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if that was a... But then I was like, well, I don't want the 13th Doctor to be the last Doctor either.
To be the last one? No.
Yeah.
I guess it's a reference to the Veil Yard, isn't it? Essentially.
That could... Yeah, I would... That's true. That could be what he's referring to there.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of the Veil Yard, but... I don't like thinking of the 13th Doctor as being the last Doctor, but if Ruth... If the events of the Time War were locked... Ruth may not know about the War Doctor, and maybe she miscounted. She suffered from the naming convention.
Potentially. Also, it's worth saying as well that the presidential chambers where the harp is and everything gets destroyed in this book. So that means someone takes the trouble just before Engines of War of rebuilding it in its entirety, complete with harp.
That's true.
I guess, Time War, I guess. But I was just like, oh, no. No, this is why I am sure this is not the last book we will see in which we have a scene in that. blooming room.
It's interesting, too, that with the time scoop, and from the Fifth Doctor's perspective, all of Ruth's time scoop usage happens a season later in his timeline, after the events of the Five Doctors, which hasn't happened to him here yet. So you get that additional kind of timey-wiminess in that what's said on Gallifrey isn't quite in sync with the Doctor's timeline.
Yeah, this is true.
From his perspective, Arc of Infinity would have, just recently happened.
Yeah, I have a theory about that. We'll go on to that later, I suspect. I'm not sure. I think Paul Cornell gets confused. Because actually, we might as well say this now. Because at one point, the Doctor refers to himself as being Lord President.
Doesn't that happen in... Oh, no, that does happen in Five Doctors. I thought it might have happened earlier in Invasion of Time. No?
So in the Invasion of... yeah, it doesn't happen. In the Invasion of Time, he is temporarily, isn't he? But I think that he resigns. I might be wrong. But I don't seem to remember, like, when he appears, at the start of the Five Doctors, everyone says, "Oh, hello, President," or whatever. There's...
That's kind of given to him at the end, yeah.
Yeah, it is. So who knows?
Paul Cornell seems to kind of share a similar opinion I do. So it's not only his youth, but there's a couple of points in the narrative where she references that the Fifth Doctor is the weakest or the most vulnerable and the best time frame to strike. And then you also get scenes where Tegan's reminiscing about the Fourth Doctor and how much better he was than the Fifth Doctor. And then she also later calls the Fifth Doctor stuffy. So I was like,
Yes.
I feel validated.
Yeah, but she only spent like an hour or two with him.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
But
yeah.
So Romana escapes the Drashigs, and then on the cameo with Glitz, it's interesting that Paul Cornell has Glitz remembering that Mel... You get the impression that Mel's left him relatively recently to go back to Earth.
Yeah.
And this was kind of a throwaway because Head Games by Steve Lyons wouldn't be published for another 16 or 17 months after that. So I don't know if that was just Paul Cornell wanting to change Mel's ending, or if that was foreshadowing, or if they're planning that far ahead. Hard to say.
Yeah. One thing's just occurred to me. Do you reckon Glitz is just in here as a Nosferatu reference?
I don't get that reference. What's the...
Well, because it wasn't Nosferatu the name of one of the early vampire movies.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, and the name of his ship. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
That feels like... I can't think of another logical reason why he's in this book.
Yeah, huh.
I mean, he's not in it for long, but I'm just like, really? Of all the people? But so, yeah, because I'd completely forgotten that Glitz made an appearance in this book.
Same. So Ruth uses the time scoop to locate the Doctor.
So Ruth's been... Yeah, she destroys like the presidential chambers, as I said. She nicks a TARDIS and she travels to the wonderful city of Manchester in 1994 or 1993. That kind of... It's 93, isn't it? It's like November 93. And yeah, so music fans, you've got Oasis making their way. It's just as Britpop is about to kind of suddenly kick in. Also, it is just after the city's failed bid to host the Olympics of the year 2000, because they were competing with Sydney, and it is not something that is mentioned at all in the book. But I remember DWM around about the time somebody wrote in and said, Paul Cornell should have made a reference to the fact that there would be lots of fading posters about the Manchester Olympic bid. Yeah, okay, I suppose. Plenty of other things he stuffs the book with. So in Manchester, Ruth encounters two goth vampire lovers, Jake and Madeline. And Jake has sired Madeline. Because we have this... I must say, I quite enjoy this sequence in which... Because like Madeline is working in Totnes, which is a little town in Devon, which... Very arty town. If you, it's quite close to where my family live down there, and when you drive into Totnes, there are signs saying "twinned with Narnia." It's they had a conventional twinning thing, and someone kept on graffitiing it, and the council eventually given up. Just like, oh, okay. I don't know of an American equivalent, but it's a very arty place. Clearly, Paul Cornell has gone there on his holidays, because he name checks two drinking establishments that are still there, and most of his references are correct. Whether or not the pub that he mentions is actually haunted, I will leave that to your discretion. Yeah, quite a cool series of sequences, and Madeline gets picked up by these vampires and gets taken up, like flown up into the sky so high up that she can see the peninsula of Devon and Cornwall hanging beneath her. And like the other vampires are kind of trying to urge Jake on and just kill her, but he is actually starting to fall for her. And it's quite sweet in its own strange, twisted way.
You have kind of this twisted love story that kind of plays out throughout the book. And this is kind of where the prologue in the book starts. And that whole sequence was great. It felt very like Anne Rice-like, and also The Lost Boys in kind of its style and its tone. And
yes,
Terrence Dicks seemed to shy away from portraying some of the more fantastic vampire elements in his book, where I think Cornell immediately goes there, and he's having them flying around, and you learn the different rules about being a vampire and how they're self-policing, and you can only sire 3 people over the course of your lifetime. But it was like kind of a self-imposed rule.
Yeah, a rule that does go out the window.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, actually, shall we talk about some of the weird vampire roles?
Yeah.
Because you've got the full moon thing. So if you get bitten by a vampire in this book, then you have vampiric symptoms and everything, but you don't become stuck as a vampire until there's a full moon, which is weird.
Yeah.
Is that what the werewolves do? It's a bit werewolfy.
And depending on your lore, like different things have different effects. These vampires are very much affected by garlic, or Garrel, as it was called in the last book.
Yeah.
What are some of the other kind of stakes through the heart or decapitation are kind of the ways to kill them, or sunlight?
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, keep an eye on that full moon thing, because that will become important.
There was a weird detail too. I think it was a little bit later in the book, but we may as well talk about it here. That ice warriors are unable to perceive vampires, and I thought that was an interesting detail. Was it because they either have a lack of faith or complete faith? There was something that there was like a throwaway reference to, and maybe the doctor says it, but that ice warriors can't even see vampires.
Yes, the vampire lore is a bit different in this, isn't it? So back to the plot. So Ruth, she uses the ring to convince the vampires of Manchester the vampire messiah is coming, and she takes them to Croatia, where Yavin was buried alive in the 40s through encounters soldiers armed with faith and crucifixes.
He escapes from the doctor's TARDIS in Chicago in 1928, and then he flees cross country, and he makes his way across Eastern Europe, and he finds himself in this village. It probably takes him a good 20 or 25 years to get there. Yeah,
it is a bit weird that he's heading off towards Eastern Europe. Yeah, where he kind of like thinking almost as if he's bound to Transylvania. It's like there is no reason why he would go in that general direction. I mean, he's just as more likely to go to Paraguay.
Was he attracted to that area from World War II and all the death, and that was an easy way for him to feed? I can't remember if that was a detail.
Yeah, there is that, isn't there? Yeah, there's an attempt to try to explain it, I guess. So they dig him up, but after 50 years under the soil, he's basically emaciated. Before he can take his rightful place as ruler, he needs some very special blood, and Ruth knows just where she can find it. Dun, dun, dun.
So
now we go a bit nuts, don't we? And some more random appearances just to come.
So the doctor and his companions are in Tasmania, where the doctor's participating in a charity cricket match. Well, Tegan, who's still recovering from, being possessed by the Mara, is reading the works of Primo Levi.
This cricket match. Okay. We have some actual real-life cricketers appearing in this. So, some Australian ones, including Merv Hughes, who had a spectacular moustache, and Mike Gatting, who was the England captain round about the time that this book was published, and he is a big Doctor Who fan.
Does he appear in the More Than 30 Years in the TARDIS?
Indeed, he does.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and Paul Cornell is quite a cricket fan as well. So I suspect that all of this was just a nice way to actually have the Fifth Doctor play cricket again. It's a little odd. And because also England aren't touring Australia during this time. So people have just kind of come down out of their way just to have a little bit of a break in the English winter, Australian summer, to just go and play some cricket in Tasmania. Yeah, it's peculiar. It doesn't really make much sense. But maybe I don't live the life of an international cricketer. Maybe they're just forever going around charity matches and they're all just piling into country houses. It's a bit of a weird thing.
I have no comment because I'm
you know nothing about cricket.
I know. I've sat through Paul Cornell's panel on Cricket 101 like 4 or 5 times, and I still couldn't tell you how to play it. And then that's not a slight on him. He does a great job explaining it. For some reason, it doesn't stick.
Oh, it's a very weird game. It's a very weird game and can go on for... I mean, I speak today after England had beaten India in the Cricket World Cup, and that was a match that... I started following it when I was in Greece, and it didn't finish until I was home. And as you know, Matt, my flight was delayed by an hour. So, me and the guy sitting next to me, we were trying to kind of like refresh before we took off just to see what the score was. And then as soon as we'd been told that we could like get our devices out of airplane mode, we just go, oh, it's going well. Because the weird thing is about cricket, you don't know that you're winning.
Oh.
You don't know that you're winning until you've pretty much won.
Huh.
It's an odd game. Anyway, I think that's enough about cricket, isn't it? Shall we talk about evil babies?
Yes. And then night falls and Ruth sends a baby vampire named the Child, who's really this creepy, like, little kid flying around. Kind of reminded me of, like, the baby weeping angels, in a way, from The Angels Take Manhattan. Ruth sends this child to leach out the Doctor's blood, but it instead finds Nyssa, who also is, not human and has different smelling blood. And I think right around here is where the dramatic reading for the month is.
Indeed. So, we'll have a dramatic reading from my friend Carly, who is Australian, so it felt appropriate. And she does an excellent podcast called Expat Focus, and she is always interested to hear from expats, apart from ones living in the UK. She has an endless supply of those. But so if you are an expat living in a country that is not the UK, and if you want to have chats about it, then go and have a look at her podcast and just get in contact with her. So Expat Focus.
Nyssa read for another 5 minutes and found her concentration faltering. She put down the book, locked the door, and got ready for bed. She'd closed the curtains and thought about leaving the window open. On Tracken, you could have done the same with the door, but freedom had its price. She closed it. Finally, she settled down to sleep. It began during a dream. Tramus, her father, was telling her that she must get out of their house, that there was no longer any place for her at his hearth. He'd found a new wife, and she was going to have a baby. Nyssa protested. She'd always been a loving daughter to him. It was wonderful that he was alive and himself. Could she not stay? No. Tramus waved a finger. She must go and sleep in the hut on the hills, with only a rough blanket to cover her. When the baby was born, they would have to treat it as an only child too, so it would be exactly like her, so she could not be in the house with it. At night, and it was night now, Nyssa would creep up to the window of her father's house and stare in at him and his new bride, slowly dancing by the fire. She had a face, but Nyssa couldn't recognize her. Something was moving across the wooden floor, a naked baby. It looked up at the window. It could see her. The baby rushed across the room, its tiny limbs working like an insect's. With one leap, it was atop the chair and had its palms and giant face against the window. Its eyes were full of watery desire. They were blue, but they could change colour any day. Its stubby little palms were white against the glass. Its full lips were sucking at the window, making a little cloud of white on red. "Let me in," he said. Nyssa wanted to know what the baby's name was, so she carefully undid the window catch and let it inside. The cold air woke her up. She was standing by the window in her night dress. and the baby was holding her hand. Nissa stifled her urge to jump back. The baby would have fallen from the windowsill where it stood. It was a little, naked, blue-eyed boy, about a year old, no more than that. It was standing on the window frame, swaying. Only its grip on her finger was keeping it upright. It was smiling at her and pointing in that curious way of babies, with one finger and all the others spread out, at the doctor's hat. She looked quickly round the room, expecting, for an insane moment, to see a mother who'd handed her the child. Nissa knew enough about Earth children to realise that the baby couldn't possibly have got there on its own. "Somebody must have broken in here," she said to the child uncertainly, "and sat you on the windowsill. Thank goodness I woke up. I might have knocked you over the edge." The story sounded ridiculous as she said it, but it was the only way she could make the facts fit. She picked the baby up. "Come on then, let's go and see the doctor. He'll know what to do with you." The little boy breathed hot baby breath against her cheek. She reached for the dressing gown that hung from the wardrobe door and in doing so exposed the mirror on the front of the cabinet. In the mirror, she wasn't carrying anything. Nissa looked down at the weight in her arms. The baby opened his mouth. Out of his pink, smooth upper gums, 2 elongated fangs emerged. With a convulsive jerk of her arms, she threw the thing onto the bed. It bounced immediately back at her, flying through the air and grabbing the arm of her nightdress. It spun onto her throat, its little hands pulling at the material around her collarbone. Terrified, Nissa found that she couldn't scream. She couldn't will herself to make the sound. She ran at the wall, all instinct not to hurt the baby gone. Its head hit the plaster and rebounded, uninjured. They fell into a corner and the baby succeeded in ripping open the material at her shoulder. Nissa grabbed the infant with both hands, trying to pull it off her, but it had enormous strength. Tiny fingers grasped her ear and pulled so hard that Nissa opened her mouth wide, unable to yell out the pain of it. The baby's other hand grabbed her bottom lip, pulling it until it was white. Nissa hit the baby with her fists, punching its body frantically, rolled around the floor, trying to dislodge it as the pain in her face grew greater. She could taste the child's fingers and they were like earth, like old mud in a playground. She tried to bite them but couldn't bring her teeth to bear on the little vice that held her lip. The baby's warm mouth descended to the flesh of her neck and she thrashed again, kicking against the door in the hope that somebody would hear her. It would hurt so much. It would hurt too much for her to stand. She wanted to scream. She wanted to beg the baby to at least let her scream. 2 injections into the jugular vein. She thought of the smell of bottled anesthetic when she felt the sharp, quick sting of inoculations at her father's hands. A huge relief washed over her at the lack of pain. Then the baby began to suckle. It was sucking and licking the blood out of her neck, its little tongue working at the wounds. She could lie here until it had taken all of it, until she'd had her life eaten away. An awful calm descended on her, and she realised that the baby wasn't just taking her blood out, it was putting something in, a calming agent, a pre-med. The animal had to be calm. There was a gentle knock on the door behind her. "Nissa, you okay?" Tegan's voice. There was another little pain as the baby disengaged itself from her vein and looked up at the door. It smiled, its lips coated in red, and then bent to resume its task. The teeth injected themselves once more and the sucking resumed. Nissa made a great effort of will and slammed her feet against the door again. "Nissa?" Tegan asked, more concerned now. "Can you open the door?" She couldn't reply. Her legs wouldn't move again. "I'm coming in." The door vibrated twice with the impact as Tegan kicked at the wood. It was a narrow corridor. She wouldn't have been able to get much leverage. The door stood firm. "Hold on," she shouted. "I'll go and get the doctor." Nissa shivered as the baby detached itself from her throat once more. It looked at her, calmly, a look of well-fed peace. It smiled a red smile. Then it rose from her, floated up to the ceiling and, like a summer wasp, out the window. Nissa put her hand to her throat, gingerly, as one inspects a tooth after dentistry. There were 2 tender puncture wounds, but they weren't bleeding. Her neck was bruised around them. Her lip hurt far worse, and her ear was throbbing red. Coughing, she stood up and tottered to her bed. She pulled the covers up over her and grabbed her pillow, pressing her neck down into it. There was a clunking sound from the door and it sprang open. The doctor strode in with Tegan behind him, replacing a skeleton key in the pocket of his dressing gown. "Nissa?" he asked urgently. "Are you all right?" "Yes." She was surprised to hear herself say it, and to hear the measured tone she said it in. "I'm fine." "Oh." He seemed almost embarrassed. "Sorry, Tegan said she heard a commotion. Must have been a nightmare." "Yes, it must have been. I was asleep." "No," she wanted to shout. "I was awake. I was assaulted." "Just as well I didn't kick down the door," Tegan muttered. "Did you bash on it, though?" "I have been known to sleepwalk." "Yes." The doctor frowned, glancing around the room. He went to the end of the bed and recovered his hat, staring at it curiously. "Well," he decided, folding his hands behind his back, "we'll leave you in peace. Tegan, before you go—" Nissa's voice rose in pitch. She felt like she was speaking properly for the first time. "Could you do something for me?" "Yes, of course." "Close the window."
All right. Well, that was wonderful. Thank you, Carly, for reading that. Chris, what was the name of her podcast again?
Expat Focus.
Yeah, listeners, check that out.
Yes, indeed.
So, yeah, that was a very creepy scene. And Tegan hears the commotion going on in Nissa's bedroom and interrupts before the child can drain all of Nissa's blood. But Nissa finds herself literally incapable of telling her friends what just happened to her. You know, the baby flies out the window and Nissa's feeling the bumps on her neck, but she can't even, bring herself to tell anyone what happened. She's just kind of frozen from doing so. And then meanwhile, having failed to obtain the doctor's blood, Ruth decides to sacrifice herself instead because she's also a Time Lord, and she uses her TARDIS to drain out every drop of her own blood and filter it through to Yarvin. And then you get a scene where Ruth regenerates, and Yarvin, restored to full health, and given the symbiotic nuclei of a Time Lord, rewards her by biting her and making her his vampire consort, and declares that the age of the undead shall begin.
Yes. So, back with Nissa. So, she's been finding sunlight a little bit of an irritant, and she's unable to get to the TARDIS, and she's very keen to find a cure for her condition, but she realises that her transformations, given the vampires a bit of a psychic link, which they're using to sort of basically stop her from telling the doctor what's happened. And that night, the vampires attack again. And this time it's two other vampires from Manchester, Jeremy and Eric. What other vampire book has vampires called Jeremy? But so Tegan uses her faith in the works of Primo Levi to drive off Jeremy. And also as well, Tegan has quite a bit of taste in Aussie pub rock. You can tell here that Paul Cornell, he's been to Australia, possibly been to Tasmania. There's a few things he gets wrong. Because one of the cricketers said that he loves Fosters. No Australians that I know drinks Fosters. It's very hard to buy Fosters in Australia. There's many fine beers in Australia. And what you must never do, if you're trying to be friendly to an Australian, do not buy them Fosters. It will not be well received. Anyway, so
prior to using the book, I think Tegan smacks one of the vampires with a Bible that leaves like a cross imprint in its flesh.
Oh yes, that's true. Yes, and and the doctor traps Eric, the other vampire, in a circle of garlic bread, which is a piece of genius. So the doctor realizes that Eric is from Manchester, but before he can learn anything more, Lord Yarvan telepathically forces Eric to kill himself and puts word out to the others that the doctor is responsible.
And that was a very gross and intense scene.
Oh, it's nasty and gory, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so the doctor, because he's worried about these vampires all kind of collaborating, decides to take Tegan and Nissa to Manchester to investigate further. But Ruth beats them to it by using her TARDIS to travel back in time. And by the time the doctor arrives, the vampires have been hunting for a few weeks. And the city is starting to panic as homeless people, students, and just other innocent folk are beginning to vanish at night.
It's kind of a ominous moment there.
Yeah.
We get a few additional scenes where Ruth's, where they're kind of collecting vampires, and Ruth's traveling by TARDIS, and you get a few different scenes of like all the different clever disguises that her chameleon circuit's taking on, like parts of trees or rocks, and so you get a sense of that, like it's a much more advanced TARDIS. And then also she takes them to a possible future where you get, and this scene reminded me a lot of Pyramids of Mars, where you get that brief scene where Sarah sees her possible future and it's kind of like a wasteland.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mirror of that scene, but you get all sorts of hemivores rising up out of the muck. Ruth's kind of making the point that even if Lord Yarvin doesn't succeed, humanity's future is like as vampires one way or another. So it's kind of like a persuasive scene to get several vampires to kind of join up with them. And also they make the point that, as they're traveling by TARDIS, the vampires are experiencing tiredness for the first time because they're traveling with the night as it's happening. So you get vampires who are having to stay up a lot longer than they've had to before. And we also get kind of a funny revelation, and this plays into some plot points later on, that Ruth, who, used to be like this scholar and in her previous regeneration and historical researcher and scientist, this regeneration of Ruth has absolutely no interest in science whatsoever. So that comes into play at some point too. So kind of funny. So the Doctor, Tegan, and Nyssa arrive in Manchester, and it's a few weeks after Ruth's backtracked, and so the city's already has a lot of different vampires there. And it's daylight now, but it's overcast. Nyssa's starting to get panic-stricken by the thought of the sun coming out, and she flees Tegan and goes back to the TARDIS. And there she locks herself in her room, and in her lab she tries to create a synthetic hemoglobin substitute, so fake blood. But it's not tasty at all, and she doesn't like it, and she ends up like vomiting it all up later. And then, unable to control her thirst, she attacks Tegan, and at the last moment she manages to resist her urge to feed, and she flees from the TARDIS into the night. And while she's feeding on a cow in the fields outside the city, she meets Jeremy, who takes her to the vampire's new home, Castle Yarvin, which is a Gothic fortress out in the forest outside of Manchester. And Yarvin welcomes her to his army, but assures her that if she doesn't wish to remain a vampire, then Ruth will see to it that her condition is cured by the next full moon. And Nyssa agrees to remain in the castle, unaware that Yarvin has no intention of keeping his word.
When I was saying that, like, Nyssa is quite relieved that it's kind of like overcast and everything. It's Manchester. Yeah, it's going to be overcast. I love Manchester, but it's likely to be raining, and particularly you're there in November. You're not going to get any awful amount of sunlight. Anyways, so apologies to any Mancunians listening, but I do love Manchester. I've got relatives from Manchester, so I am half Mancunian. I say what I say with love and great affection. Now, one thing as well I'm going to say, the geography of this book is all over the shop in Manchester. There's quite a few bits, in the same way as happens in the books in London often. Like, people walk from one place to another. It's like, no, that's the other end of the city. Yeah, so the Doctor and Tegan are going off vampire hunting, and they capture our friends, the lovers, Jake and Madeline. But before they can figure out where Nyssa is and what she's up to, they're interrupted by the American evangelist Victor Lang and his gang of local Christians. I'm not up on my TV evangelists, but yeah, Victor Lang's a piece of work, isn't he? He's very much of the tub thumping breed, isn't he?
Yeah,
of the funding, and he's a big walking stereotype as Victor Lang.
Yeah, and the whole like televangelist thing. I feel like some of that was in. I recognize like commentary on that from like at the time, like U2 in their Rattle and Hum and Zooropa tours. They had televangelists, kind of as villains or as, or if not villains,
Yeah. Anti-heroes.
Yeah.
And you've also got the Genesis song around about this time of, is it called Talking to Jesus?
Oh, yeah.
It's a song from the point of view of a kind of like an evangelical priest. Yeah, so the Doctor releases Jake and Madeline before the Christians arrive, telling them to ensure that Nyssa remains safe. And he's a little bit thrown off by Victor Lang's claims that the city has become a hotbed for satanic cultists who torture their own children in ceremonies. He feels that this sensationalist approach distracts attention from the real causes of child abuse. Now, I think this is a reference to kind of round about this time as well. In real life, there was, I think it was up in the Orkneys, up in Scotland, there were rumours of kind of like satanic abuse of children, and I can't remember the full ins and outs of the case, but it did seem, I think it kind of bordered on, with no pun intended, being a bit of a witch hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So it was stuff that was very much in the zeitgeist at the time.
For sure, and you had similar things happening in the United States too, where in the early 80s there was very much like a satanic panic where there would be, oh, listen to this record backwards and don't play Dungeons and Dragons, you know. Milder variations of that continued, like even through like the Harry Potter books and stuff. You know,
yeah.
That sort of demons and witchcraft and yeah.
Yeah, when I think with some of these cases, children were taken away by social services in the UK as a result of some of these things. Yeah.
And the US as well. So you had that sort of real life impact from these false claims that in some cases is still, even recently there in the news, there's been cases of that being cleaned up or people falsely imprisoned. So it's yeah, even though Paul Cornell's writing about it here in 93, 94, it's something that, you know, goes back ages.
Yeah, it's a depressing thing, isn't it, about sometimes reading some of these books that were written like 25 years or so ago, and you're like, yeah, we've not moved on. Yeah, so Lang claims to have been contacted by a frightened young woman who knows that what is known as a Black Sabbath is going to be held nearby, and the doctor decides to accompany Lang on the raid, find out what's really going on. And on the way, he passes the Christians these garlic capsules disguised as treats, hoping to arm them against the vampires without having to explain that they're facing vampires. As he's expected, the cultists are vampires and the Sabbath is a trap. But things take quite a turn when the vampires start using mortar shells containing a mist that causes most of the Christians to spontaneously combust, because like this mist forces people to become vampires, and because the Christians have got this really devout faith, this unshakable faith, they can't cope with being vampires, and so they just explode. And there's one lad called Matthew who survives, like pretty much the only one of this lot to survive apart from Lang. And Matthew claims he's now damned forever. And Madeline, one of the young lovers, takes Lang over to Castle Yarwin, where he's placed in a pit whilst he sweats the garlic out of his system. And they also indulge in a bit of light torture, because it's that kind of book.
And you also get scenes with, like, the vampires having dinner and, you know, their larder stock of people and, like, you know, the kitchen and stuff like that, where I think Paul Cornell could have been a lot more horrific. I mean, it's pretty gruesome, but I think this is him dialing it back a little bit, you know, with the whole keep some of that stuff to the new adventures. You know, separating the missing adventures from the new a little bit.
Only a little bit, though.
Yeah.
It's still moderately gory.
Yeah.
I can't see this being published as like being a 13th Doctor novel.
Yeah.
You know, they wouldn't touch this, I don't think, these days.
And there's also, you know, there's an implication that the Doctor may have unfortunately helped some of these Christians explode, because it's not only the faith, but it's also potentially that some of them ingested the garlic beforehand too. For some of them it might be a combination. So I liked that was touched on briefly, you know, where the Doctor was a little uncertain if he, you know, may have contributed to what happened there too. Yeah, that kind of nuance is very much appreciated where you're looking at some of those things in the course of the narrative. So the Doctor and Tegan take the terrified Matthew home, and then they return to the TARDIS, where the Doctor studies tissue samples that he's obtained from some of the exploded folks. He stopped to do some sample collecting.
Yeah.
Tegan, you know, is kind of feeling restless and she wants to help, but the Doctor's busy with his work, so she leaves the TARDIS to see if she can learn anything more, and she encounters a homeless person who's wearing Nissa's old bracelet, so he kind of fills her in on some things. Matthew overnight's turned into a vampire and he's hiding in the sewers, having killed his own parents. And then the Doctor, meanwhile, back in the lab, he's in the TARDIS, he's managed to get this odd chemical out of the tissue samples and takes it outside and exposes it to sunlight because he wants to see if it'll combust. But then as he exits the TARDIS, the sun abruptly sets 2 hours ahead of schedule, and the Doctor starts collapsing kind of in agony as his time senses are overloaded. And I was getting, well, I guess it would be flash forwards to the Five Doctors, where he's having twinges of cosmic angst. And as he falls, the chemical that he was going to test breaks free of its container and starts attacking him like a living thing. So out of this vial, it's almost like a membrane that starts covering his face. And just as he's kind of falling into unconsciousness, Romana, who was rescued from Glitz's ship by the Time Lords and taken back to Gallifrey, she contacts him telepathically. So she's like, "Doctor, this is an emergency." And the Doctor's like, "This isn't a really good time." And being attacked by
busy at the moment, yes.
But she tries to give him, as much information as she can, recognizing that she's speaking to, not the Seventh Doctor who she was most recently with, but an earlier incarnation.
I think it's around here that the TARDIS is at the Arndale Centre, which is a major kind of shopping centre in Manchester. And also, within about 3 years of the book having been written, it's destroyed by the IRA. So very much dates this book to being sort of, I mean, though we already know it's set in 93, 94, but it cannot be any later than 96. But they did rebuild it, so you can go and go to the Arndale Centre, and you can go through, follow the steps of Tegan. And mercifully, I don't believe anybody was actually killed in that incident. But yeah, it's it was one of these things that certainly it haunted Manchester when I was spending time there in the late 90s. It was like it'd gone back to the Blitz. It was a lot of damage.
Huh.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so sorry, that was a bit of a, hopefully not a dull tangent, but anyway, some of my Mancunian knowledge. So Matthew emerges from the sewers and attacks Tegan, but the daylight suddenly returns, which forces him to return back into the sewers. And this is because Ruth's prototype time freeze has short-circuited, and she's been testing it with the brain of a goat. Which, really? Why are we doing this? There's plenty of students around Manchester you could nick. So anyway, so it seems to require something more sophisticated than a goat to keep it going. So, and according to prophecy, this has got to be Yarman, who will give his life for his people. However, Yarman's got other plans. Meanwhile, Victor Lang his body's now free of garlic. And so he's therefore gassed, removed from the pit, and he's being operated upon. And Nyssa comes in to watch the operation. But I mean, when we talk about an operation here, like, you can see his innards. It's it's a bit grim. It's a bit grim. And Ruth casually tells her that Yarwan has been lying about the cure, that there will never be another full moon, and soon everyone on Earth will be a vampire. And Nyssa tries to flee, but Ruth, knowing Nissa's had enough time to send a message to the Doctor and lure him into the trap, catches Nyssa and buries her alive. Yeah, I think it's probably around about here. We're kind of like, the vampire's plan makes no sense. I think we might possibly go into this a bit later, but it really makes no sense. Because they're wanting to feed on a whole host of people and turn everyone into vampires, and surely they're going to run out of food.
Well, that's part of their plan, but then I think from there, then their plan is to get some more Time Lord blood and then start invading Gallifrey.
Yes, that's true.
I think it's converting Earth to get their numbers up, but yeah, that's not revealed here yet. On the scene where Tegan's attacked by Matthew from the sewer, I was just...
Yeah.
It felt like almost comical in like a, the Stephen King It with Pennywise in the sewer, where Tegan's just like, is someone in there? I'm going to get a little closer. I'm going to get a little, and just like, I'm going to lean in farther. It's Matthew, it's you. Are you skulking and covered in blood? Do you need help? Let me, it's just like, oh my gosh, it was, it just made me laugh.
Do you think it's a parody of Arkham Infinity?
Which part? It's been a while since I've seen that one.
Well, particularly like her cousin, whose name escapes me, is forever falling into various kind of like horror tropes, isn't he?
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
It's been a while since I've seen it,
yeah.
But her strangely very English cousin. Tegan's family tree is quite an interesting one, isn't it? Anyway.
One other bit that I found kind of funny, and that's when Lang was in the pit, Nissa was talking to him, and he goes, "Yeah, they fed me goat earlier." So the rest of what they had, I think they fed him the leftovers of whatever head was powering the time device.
Waste not, want not. These are good principles to live by, isn't it?
Yeah. So then, with the goat head sort of shorting out, the plasma that was attacking the Doctor, because he's outside the TARDIS, the sun jumps back up in the sky, and then so the plasma burns to ashes. There's a lot of Thanos-style dusting that happens in this story.
It's a vampire story. Vampire stories has lots of things that turn to dust, isn't there? There's less full moons in most of the vampire stories.
So the Doctor's suspicions are verified. The vampires have developed a vaporized form of vampire DNA, which can be absorbed through the skin, and that's what was contained in the mortars from the attack that happened the previous night. And anyone exposed to the mist will be transformed into a vampire, except for those who are protected by faith or garlic. If you're protected in one of those ways and you're exposed to it, you'll spontaneously combust. So the vampires release Victor Lang, the televangelist, and he leaves and goes back to the city because he's organizing like a rally that evening in one of the stadiums.
In Old Trafford. Yeah, the home of Manchester United. So, an actual real-life football stadium. So, I mean, you seriously could go on a walking tour and follow some of the places in this book.
So, Madeline helps return Victor Lang to Manchester, and she, during this point, different vampires have kind of different special skills, and one of Madeline's is telepathy. So she reads Victor's mind and realizes that he's hiding something from his followers. And then before dropping him off, she plants a post-hypnotic command ordering him to reveal the truth. So Lang recovers, finding himself back in Manchester, and convinces himself that somehow God has saved him from the demons in the castle. And the people of the city, terrified by both all the killings that have been happening, or vampire conversions, as well as the sun having an eclipse or setting 2 hours early, everyone kind of goes to the stadium to hear his words, because he was scheduled to preach there that night anyway. And the Doctor and Tegan encounter the crowd, and then they see numbers appearing on Lang's forehead, which I didn't really understand how that was happening, if it was like everyone could see these numbers, or if it was just the Doctor that could see them, or the Doctor and Tegan could see them. But he has like GPS coordinates of like Castle Yarvin, which Nissa wrote on his skin with heat-sensitive chemicals while observing the operation. So that was Nissa's way of getting a message out to the Doctor.
Yeah, it's a bit strange, isn't it? It's one way that you can help the story go on.
Wouldn't have been my first idea.
No, it makes you wonder what ideas he's turned down, doesn't it? So the Doctor and Tegan head over to Castle Yarvin, and they find that it's got a moat around it. And then the Doctor finds a kind of a sneaky way to get in, and the moat starts kind of floating up in the air and kind of going back and forth, and we realise it's a TARDIS. And it's Ruth's TARDIS. So they go in, and because they've never seen any horror fiction, they split up to search for Nissa. And Tegan finds her first in this like room of soil and stuff where she's just been kept, but she's like really thirsty and hungry. And then the Doctor finds the sleeping Yarwin and is preparing to stake him. But when he puts the stake over Yarwin's heart, this triggers a circuit that activates the time freeze. And night then kind of falls over Manchester at 2 p.m. However, it's November. Night will be falling over Manchester at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I don't think it's necessarily going to cause this mass panic, but it causes a mass panic. So Ruth saves Tegan from Nissa and throws her and the Doctor into the pit, explaining that whilst the time freeze holds like the Western Hemisphere in perpetual night, Yarwin's vampire army are going to sort of start spraying their vapor gas into the winds, and soon the entire population of the Earth will become vampires. And then, as we were saying earlier, then they will go on and conquer Gallifrey. So
their plan is to like incrementally spread this DNA. It's like
Yeah.
They don't have to do the time freeze. They could just use her TARDIS and do it like they were collecting the vampires from earlier, but it's more dramatic this way, I think.
I guess. But yeah, as I say,
And,
I don't know if necessarily in November you'll notice Manchester being darker than normal.
And the goat head was replaced in the machine by Jeremy, so the other vampire, his friend Eric, was killed, but now Jeremy's volunteered for this, so he's now part of the machine. So back in Manchester, the terrified citizens, fearing that the end of the world is coming, are filling up Old Trafford Stadium to hear Victor Lang speak. And he steps forward to address the masses, and then Madeline's implanted command takes effect, and he unexpectedly blurts out that he had a relationship with his own daughter. So,
And by relationship, we mean...
an abusive...
Yes, yeah.
So the stunned congregation kind of watches in silence, and then the material, so when he was operated on earlier, the vampires were putting in canisters into his body, which explode, and then the vampire DNA gas cloud is released into the stadium. And as this is happening, it also affects Lang, and he starts to transform into a vampire before their very eyes. And then a lot of the people in the audience are like parents who are weeping for lost children and, friends of students, and all the missing kids of Manchester come back in and start either slaughtering people or helping spread the vampire vapor into the stadium. And then one of the vampires that comes in is the child who, the baby vampire that sired Nissa from earlier. He descends from the skies and joins Victor Lang on stage. And then so the entire congregation in the stadium is either, some of them are transforming, and some of the more faithful ones, or the ones who were lucky enough to have Italian for dinner, start burning instead.
Yes. Well, you get some garlic and Indian cookery as well.
True.
There's a lot of Indian restaurants in Manchester. So, back at Castle Yarwin, Tegan learns that Ruth is an old friend of the Doctor's. And at one point, the Doctor had thought of fleeing Gallifrey with her. And Ruth explains her belief that the Time Lords are destined to become a vampire race, and asks the Doctor to become a consort whilst Yarwin is sacrificed to the Time Freeze. And in a bit of a surprising twist, the Doctor allows Ruth to bite him, at least partly to kind of keep her away from Tegan. But as Ruth prepares to install Yarwin in the Time Freeze, Yarwin takes her prisoner. And here he reveals something that I don't remember happening in Blood Harvest. It says that O'Gonnell, which is the weird ghosty bad spirity thing from Blood Harvest, appeared on his homeworld, Yarwin's homeworld that is, to warn him that his future consort would betray him. I didn't notice that actually happening in Blood Harvest.
Yeah, I think that was an extra scene.
Yes.
That Paul Cornell wrote, for this.
Yeah, for this. Yeah, he's known all along that Ruth only intended to use his kind as breeding stock, and he no longer requires her services.
So there was one other thing I was going to mention from earlier. When it's revealed that Ruth knew the Doctor and they were from the same graduating class or whatever.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of funny that the list of all the different troublemakers in the Doctor's class. So you have the Rani, and I'm sure they would have mentioned Koshi, but they didn't have the name for the Master yet from David McKinty's book. But you get it kind of I think the monk is mentioned.
Yes, indirectly, yeah.
Magnus. That was kind of funny.
Doesn't she call him Theta as well?
Oh, yeah, his nickname from Armageddon Factor? No.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I was thinking Apocalypse Element, but that's a Big Finish thing.
Yeah.
So rather than Yarvin, take the place in the time freeze machinery, he decides he's just going to install the Doctor in there instead. And that his plan is, as the Doctor's mind burns out while he's keeping the time freeze going, he's going to work his way through all his remaining incarnations and drain each of them of blood to help populate the vampire army. But at the very last moment, the Doctor, who was alerted earlier by Romana in that flashback sequence, realizes, that Ruth is wearing the Ring of Rassilon. So he shouts out a command to it, telling the TARDIS to dematerialize. So the Ring of Rassilon, because it controls all of Time Lord technology, Castle Yarvin dematerializes. and then the time freeze around Earth is broken. So daylight immediately returns to Manchester, and the vampire army, which are all pretty much concentrated in the stadium at this point, they get caught off guard and burst into flames. And so you get Victor Lang, Matthew, the boy from the sewers, as well as the vampire baby child. They all burn and kind of explode. They get dusted by the sunlight. And then with Nissa, who, since the vampire baby died, she's never fed on human blood, and it isn't the next full moon yet. I think that was something like 24 hours away or 12 hours away. So she's restored back to normal. And in the confusion, the Dr. Tegan and Nissa escape, and they emerge from Ruth's TARDIS just as it materializes on a distant planet, which the Doctors visited before. The chameleon circuit, so when Ruth's TARDIS arrives, it transforms into a flat disc, so you have the console room there, and then just a really big disc that's just kind of on the surface of the planet. So it's like the roof is off the TARDIS, basically, and the whole place is open to the elements. And then the sun is just set. And Nissa and Tegan were, I think, kind of excited. They're like, oh, this is a great plan. You're going to destroy the vampires. And he said that, and this felt very new series to me in a way, but I suppose it was always there as part of the classic series too. But the Doctor says he can't do that. He has to offer Yarvin a chance to settle on this world, whereas people can develop an artificial food source and live without needing to kill. Yarvin rejects this offer. And he's like, you're a fool, you brought us to this planet and it's nightfall, and, all the vampires are swarming around the Dr. Tegan and Nissa. Mm-hmm. And then, just as that happens, the planet's second sun rises, just as the Doctor knew it would. And then, caught entirely off guard, Yarvin and his vampires all immolate, while the Doctor, who's only been a vampire for a few minutes, survives his exposure to the sunlight. It's just like a sunburn like Nissa was experiencing earlier. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of a really brilliant moment where it reminded me a little bit of Tatooine from Star Wars, but the whole second sun in the sky.
It does have a kind of a Tatooine vibe. With the sires dying before the people they'd bitten becoming actual proper vampires due to the full moon, I think, why don't you just move to TARDIS like 100 years or so into the future? Or enough time where the vampires might have possibly died or something. It just didn't make an enormous amount of sense, but hey-ho. The Doctor pilots the very few survivors back to Earth, and he programs Ruth's stolen TARDIS to return to Gallifrey with Ruth in it. He then returns to his own TARDIS, but Ruth is there waiting, and she uses her ship's chameleon circuit to transfer herself into the Doctor's TARDIS. How does she do that? Because it reaches across, sort of just by touching it.
Like an electric tendril.
Yeah, and so that's how she's been able to kind of get into the Doctor's TARDIS. She accuses the Doctor of abandoning her on Gallifrey. Then he says that he did this deliberately, knowing that a fugitive's life would be for her, and he thought that he would actually she could go on and achieve great things, fight a system within, but he didn't expect her to kind of, basically go a little bit evil. And furious, she attacks him, but whilst the TARDIS is mid-flight, Tegan manages to open the doors and kind of chucks her out into the vortex.
Or Nissa does.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. And that way, the Doctor is kind of cured of his own vampirism.
So the TARDIS doors act like they do in the classic series, and you don't have the nice extended bubble where you can float gently outside like Amy Pond does, but more like Enemy of the World, where it just kind of sucks her out into the time winds and into the vortex.
Well, you say the classic series, the most recent TV episode of Doctor Who, as we record this, also featured somebody being sucked out.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Huh.
So, so that time bubble, that comes and goes. that kind of like protective bubble outside the TARDIS. But yeah.
Much like the HAD system.
Yes, yeah.
Depending if you said it first. So then, the Doctor, Tegan, and Nissa return to Tasmania for the end of their charity cricket match, and then depart for adventures elsewhere. Maybe Modron and Dead, maybe another adventure with the Mara.
Yes.
And then back on Gallifrey, Romana's offered a position on the High Council for her services, and on the outskirts of Earth's solar system, Jake and Madeline, who had given up on Ruth and Yarvin some time ago, have been flying out and catch up to the Voyager 2 probe, and then strap themselves aboard and turn into canisters of vapor and settle in for a long sleep to see what the future holds.
And there ends the book. Also in Gallifrey, you have this kind of like little sort of scene where, unnoticed in the back of a room, there's kind of two people kind of playing chess. One dressed in black and one dressed in white, both with birds on their heads. So it's a black and white Guardian, folks. So there's some interesting bits of foreshadowing there. Mm-hmm. Just as I think all of Nissa's like scientific experiments and trying to kind of cure people of this disease of vampirism, that is probably foreshadowing Terminus, I reckon.
Oh, I didn't put that together, but that totally makes sense. Yeah. Speaking of foreshadowing too, there's a mention of you can only, Gallifrey happens in the distant past, and you can only look so far into Gallifrey's future, and then the events are kind of time locked. And the disappearance of Gallifrey from modern timelines it works nicely both with like the events of the Time War and being trapped in a pocket universe like a cup of soup in the 50th. That was kind of an interesting throw forward that worked. One other thing I was just going to say about the ending.
Yeah.
I liked the whole Voyager 2 thing was fun and I appreciated it, but it just kind of raised more questions than answers for me, like in terms of how they plan to survive and just that they were able to fly out that far into space and manage to shield themselves from the sun. I mean, solar winds are just, they're so much more intense in space than on Earth and a lot brighter too. I found out online that according to the book Managra, Jake and Madeline returned to Earth at some point in the 3rd millennium and founded a new dynasty of vampires before they were killed. So I kind of liked it more open-ended. But so what did you think of Goth Opera?
I enjoyed it. It was certainly he's very creative, as Paul Cornell, with a lot of the gore and kind of like how I think he's having a bit of a blast writing these vampires. I think I think he probably enjoys writing them a little bit more than he does writing the TARDIS crew. I mean, I've never read Anne Rice, but it does feel like we've wandered into an Anne Rice novel that just happens to feature the Doctor as a bit of a supporting character.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. I happen to be a fan of Anne Rice books.
It's good fun, it's memorable, but there are some times though where I just gotta go, okay, all right, we're doing this now. It's a quirky little thing. What did you make of it?
I liked it a lot. Some of the horror elements squicked me out a little bit, but I don't think Paul Cornell was overly gratuitous either. Like I was saying, I think he could have taken it a lot farther, but I'm glad he exercised some of the restraint that he did. Like the Doctor gingerly, walked Tegan past the kitchen without describing in detail what was in there. Choices like that helped establish like how tonally these books are a little bit different or are supposed to be different from the New Adventures. And in that sense, I thought Goth Opera was really well written. I thought it really captured the Fifth Doctor's era, both the good and the bad of that era. And the characters, in my opinion, were just really spot on. I'd imagine it captures the setting of early 90s Manchester fairly well, but I mean, you'd be more able to opine on that than me. But my knowledge of Manchester is basically the movie 24-Hour Party People, so I don't have a lot of history of it.
But if you were only going to see one movie about Manchester, that's probably not a bad one. There is very much, particularly in the 90s, there is a Manchester strut, and you see many examples of that in 24-Hour Party People. I'd also recommend the movies Live Forever and Supersonic. So Live Forever is about the 90s Britpop movement across the UK, but with quite a few contributions from Manchester bands. Supersonic is about Oasis. They're both very interesting movies. We'll tell you more about that kind of time if you are so inclined.
Anything else I would mention about this book? Ian and Barbara's son gets another mention.
John, Ian Spotted, Johnny Chess.
Yeah, it was first mentioned in Time Worm Revelations.
Nope, that was the first novel he was mentioned in. So he appeared in fanzines in the 80s. In stories written by Paul Cornell and Keith Topping. So it was his own fanfic character that he eventually turned into
a punk rocker,
into novels. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and who ends up marrying Tegan in some of the stories.
That's a better fate for Tegan than the one Big Finish had in store for her.
Yeah. Well, and also that short story that we read in which she's all a bit heartbroken and
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yep. From Short Trips.
yes.
Um,
So I think are we getting to the stage where we're starting to rate this one?
yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I think I'm gonna give this one an 8 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it about the same as Blood Harvest for me. What's I think interesting is, like I mentioned earlier, I had read both of these as a teenager in the 90s. I very much like Blood Harvest about the same now as I did back then, but I probably would have given Goth Opera a 4 or a 5 at the time, just kind of thinking it was slow and not a lot happened. But in rereading it now, I was way more into the character development and the interplay with the TARDIS team this time around, as well as, all of the vampire stuff. And I felt that Paul Cornell really kind of gave me some more insights into both Nyssa and Tegan that I didn't really have before.
Mm.
And I appreciated his digs at the Fifth Doctor every once in a while. So, yeah, I would say probably an 8 out of 10 for me. The stuff with Victor Lang and the Preacher and his whole backstory and crimes, that was all really loudly telegraphed throughout the book, and it didn't really come across as much of a surprise or revelation that I think, may have been intended.
Yeah.
It seemed kind of like that's where they were going with it. But
Yeah.
how about you? How would you score this one?
I think I'll give it a 7. I mean, I did enjoy it. I think it was not various flaws, but yeah, it's fun. It's quite interesting that it doesn't feature a lot of Cornell's stylistic flourishes that he had in the New Adventures. For example, in the New Adventures, there would often be lots of owls that appear. An owl does appear in this book, but almost as if to point out that there'll be no further owls making appearances. And I do love that you can read it as this twisted love story between Jake and Madeline. Because at one point they take a little break from the main thrust of the narrative to go and visit a girl that had bullied Madeline in school, and they take her up several thousand feet and then just drop her through the roof of Exeter Cathedral. So yeah, they are very nasty folk. But certainly, I always found it enjoyable whenever they were on the page, because I was like, "Oh, where are we going to go with this?" Because they feel like moderately kind of like realistic people,
and almost the main characters of the book.
Yeah, apart from every now and again they just only take a back seat because the book remembers that it's a Doctor Who novel. It's not the exciting adventures of Jake and the vampire from Totnes.
All right. Well, anything else you'd say about this one?
I didn't know too many people called Madeline in the 90s. For teenagers, even in Totnes. Totnes, as we've established before, pretty hippie and strange. But apart from that, no, I have nothing further to add.
All right. Well, Chris, it's time for listener feedback. So we have one email this month, a quick note from listener Jamie from New York, who I think we had an email from last month as well. He thanks us for another great episode with Blood Harvest, and said he felt we paid just the right amount of reverence or irreverence to Mr. Terrence Dix. And he points out that the 3 separate murders and investigations in Chicago are set up in a way that is structurally very similar to another Dix story, the splitting into 3 groups and 3 separate approaches to Rassilon's Dark Tower. I didn't catch that.
No, I must say.
Yeah, kind of the three groups there. He also writes in with some special praise for the dramatic reading and says nice work to Bill Evenson. But thank you, Jamie, very much for your comments, and appreciate that.
Yeah.
One thing that I was hoping that one of the listeners would catch, but no one said anything, is I was quite proud that the piece that's playing in Doc's place is period appropriate for the time. It's a jazz standard called Stardust, and it was written a few years in I think 27, a few years before the novel's set, but it didn't become popular until 1929, which is the year that the Chicago portions of the book take place.
On a similar vein about Blood Harvest, Jeff Waddle says that he wished that they'd stayed in Chicago for the whole of the book. Like, the gangster stuff was great. The second part of the Planet of Vampires, not so much. Which I think that was kind of like in line with my thoughts, I think. We also heard from Ted McGilly, who said that he's reread Blood Harvest at least twice, and that this was the kind of new adventure book that he very much loved when the show was off the air, as he feels that it was combining the TV show's tropes with an elevated Target novelisation, and the result is an enjoyable romp. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a reminder, please send in your emails to andwbcpodcast@gmail.com with your comments or questions, or if you're interested in performing a dramatic reading and have access to a halfway decent microphone, feel free to also send us a note.
Fair enough, yes.
On Twitter, we have a few recent tweets sent our way. Bill Filer, unit operative, writes that he recently read the 20th anniversary of Who Killed Kennedy,
Oh,
the free online version based on our recommendation, and he had a blast reading it.
cool.
Keith thanks us for the Blood Harvest episode and enjoyed it. Lone Wolf 1965 writes that Blood Harvest was his morning listen and that it was excellent. Jeff Elston writes, great job on the Blood Harvest episode. He has happy memories of reading this one when he was younger and loved all the continuity in it. Mm-hmm. He enjoyed the way it dovetails into Goth Opera and is looking forward to this month's episode, which he's listening to right now. How meta.
Indeed, yes.
Adrian Greetham writes about Blood Harvest that he loves this book. He says, Terrence Dicks, magnificently, as you would expect, mixes the 1920s storyline and a return to E-Space for an entertaining tale of gangsters, vampires, and Gallifreyan revenge. Another Adrian, Adrian Barry, writes, although tagged along with Goth Opera, Blood Harvest builds on State of Decay, and more bits are also added in the Fourth Doctor segment of the Eight Doctors, also by Terrence Dicks. And then Stephen from the New to Who podcast writes in to let us know that the quote from Terrence Dicks that amused you, Chris, the one about Draconians and egg timers.
Oh, yes.
That's based on a quote from the noir film The Third Man.
Ah.
Where Orson Welles says, in Italy for 30 years under the bourgeois, they had warfare, terror, murder, and bloodshed. Yet they produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Renaissance. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love and 500 years of democracy, and what did they produce? The cuckoo clock.
Yeah. And the tendency to smuggle away Nazi gold. Yeah. Oh, I've forgotten. I've seen The Third Man. I've only seen it once, but yeah.
Very cool. So, yeah, those are some of our recent tweets. You can follow us at ANDWBC Podcast. And if you'd like to help other listeners find us, please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice.
This is all very much appreciated. All right. This is where we get to the scary bit of the show, isn't it? This is where we find out what we're doing next month.
We've faced vampire eviscerations, so this is the easy part.
Yeah. So this is easy for you. I don't know what you're about to say. Oh dear, you're chuckling.
Just because I'm excited.
Yes. Okay.
So next month will be our 30th episode, which is a bit of a milestone for us because it marks the halfway point of the original podcast in terms of number of episodes. And not saying we'll go as long as they did, or maybe we'll go longer, with the show. Who knows? But it's kind of an important marker nonetheless. So I wanted to do something a little bit special. Are you okay so far?
So far, yes. My mind is racing as to what this is. Oh, I think I know what we're going for. Yes.
Well, Chris, we're about to get a shift on. So we're going to be joining the modern era.
Okay, cool.
And reading a 13th Doctor story.
Cool. Which one?
There's, I think, 5 options to choose from. There's been 4 novels released so far. In addition to, I think there's the first compilation from the Titan graphic novel recently out, but I thought, it would be best to start at the very beginning with the first ever 13th Doctor novel published. So we're going to go with The Good Doctor by Juno Dawson.
Okay. Cool.
Kind of anticlimactic after all that.
Yeah. So it is a book of which I know pretty much nothing.
I hear there's an Orville episode very similar to it. That's all I know about it.
Okay. I thought you were going to go for like the 50th anniversary series of kind of like novellas.
That would be a lot. That's like 700 pages, I think.
Yeah, that's a lot of reading. So yeah, cool.
There's also an unabridged audio version available, read by Claire Corbett, who listeners may recall also read Touched by an Angel. So
Yeah,
if you'd rather listen to it, there's that option as well.
cool. Should be interesting.
Yeah. Get your custard creams ready.
Yes, yeah, and hope that the TARDIS will look nicer and better. But yeah, I don't like the modern TARDIS. I'm sorry.
Well, the nice thing with the book is it's in prose and you don't have to look at it.
No, you don't.
Well, until next month, this has been Matt in Minnesota.
Chris in South London. Happy reading.
Thank you for listening to the all-new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast. Special thanks to George C. Music for use of their song, Doctor Who Theme, Swing Jazz Version. You can follow us on Twitter at ANDWBC Podcast and like us on Facebook. You can support the show by leaving us a rating and review on iTunes. You can contact the show by emailing your thoughts to andwbcpodcast@gmail.com. And until next month, happy reading.
There is a book I have my eye on, and you have not gone for that Doctor or the author. So, yeah. I'll keep my powder dry till next month. I recently realised that Mike Collins is a pseudonym. Maybe that was stuff that just everyone knew.
I didn't know that.
Stephen Cole.
Also Stephen Cole, huh?
Yeah. So Stephen Cole had a few pseudonyms on the go. One for short stories, one for novels.
I was not aware.
No.
All right.
Cool, I think we just about got away with that. I shall let you get on with your evening, and I need to go get some sleep. I'm rambling like a tired man. I shall dream of the time monster.